So hello there guys and welcome back to the brand new DNF Live Watchalong. We've been doing qualifying sessions for a little bit now and now we are here at the British Grand Prix, the home of Formula One, my home and my guest's home circuit as well, although a little bit more to a degree than myself I'd imagine. But I hope you guys are well and I hope you guys are looking forward to a tantalizingly exciting qualifying session which could be impacted by the weather. And if you've been following the broadcast for F1 for the last couple of days, you will know that we could potentially also not only have Red Bull and Ferrari, but Mercedes in the mix as well, which could prove to be very exciting. But without further ado, let's introduce my guest for this DNF1 Live Watch-Along. We have the brilliant professional motorsport commentator for GT Open and Euro Formula. It's George Morgan. George, first of all, thanks for coming back on your first ever DNF1 Live Watch-Along. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Adam. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be part of this. Obviously, it's great to be here once again in a live atmosphere, which is obviously something I'd imagine I'm more used to, actually, to be fair. But looking forward to seeing what the British circuit of Silverstone has in store for us. I think we're going to be in for a really exciting qualifying event, personally.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm just looking on the broadcast at the moment. Of course, we are watching this live. So hopefully, if you're watching it with us, let us know. If you aren't watching it with us and obviously you want to know what's going on for us, let us know in the chat as well. But there could be rain. And just looking at the live images on Sky F1 that we're watching, George, we can see that rain could come, according to one of the team's radars, about 10 minutes before qualifying, actually, any moment now almost. So in your mind, George, how are you looking forward to a wet qualifying, or would you rather see Silverstone in the dry? Because it's kind of a bit of a hit and miss, isn't it, with a track like Silverstone?
I think you could have it either way. I honestly think that Silverstone offers so much variable that adding a little bit of rain to it, I think, will make it possibly more exciting. We could see some outsiders step into the fray. I know from the top 5 that I've selected, I've actually done it off the basis that wet weather could be a factor anyway. There's certainly, as you've just alluded to on the radars, the clouds are sweeping this way. I believe it was Karun Chandhok who said about 10 miles away they were forecasting heavy rain at that period of time, and that is now slowly finding its way over to the circuit. So obviously I think we're going to be in for a really damp session. So these drivers are really going to have their wits about them. And I have to tell you, it's going to be an exciting one. I really am looking forward to it. I'm hoping, as long as everyone stays on the track, everyone posts their fastest times. But I would like to see some outsiders coming into the mix.
And as you say that, George, the umbrellas are starting to go up in the grandstand, so we're already getting that rain by the looks of it. And again, according to the radar, it looked like it was going to go on for about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour or so, which would take us roughly to around the end of Q1, assuming that there are no delays or red flags involved. And you know, how often have we said that? We often get red flags in qualifying. But guys, let us know in the chat what your predictions are for qualifying. Just seeing the chat already starting to get underway. MotoGP Adam saying hi. Hi Adam, hope you're well. Hi Margaret Pine, hope you are doing as well. Well also, thank you very much for the well wishes. And George, on the subject of predictions, before we get underway for qualifying, who have you gone for your top 5 this afternoon?
Well, I think Ferrari are going to top out certainly P1 or certainly the pole position spot. Charles Leclerc, I think, will be back in form, or certainly landing the big pole time. I think Verstappen will join him on the front row for Red Bull. And I think Hamilton, I think this is going to be a big weekend for Mercedes, because obviously they've been chipping away, I think improving, making steady gains. It looks like they're getting the porpoising situation under control now. I think Hamilton will certainly venture his way into 3rd spot. I'm expecting a big run as well from Fernando Alonso. I think this could be a big weekend for Alpine as well. 4th place for Alonso, 2nd row of the grid. And I've put Russell in that 5th place as well. So I think we'll see 2 silver arrows in the top 5.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. And given that this is a circuit that Mercedes have often done well here, it's a very smooth circuit. So, of course, it should be less bouncing for them. And from what we've seen so far this weekend, Mercedes definitely look on it. In dry conditions, at least, they're certainly in the hunt for the big points this weekend. How far would you agree to that Mercedes being in the hunt this weekend for perhaps a race win or a big podium?
I think it's really possible. I think with the wet, I mean, we know how good George Russell is in the wet. We saw his efforts in qualifying at Spa only a year or so ago when he drove the Williams, managing to park that on the front row of the grid. So, you know, I think if you put that into context, you know, he's got a faster car this year. who knows? I have to tell you, I think Russell could be the big shocker. I think the wetter it gets, I think we'll see more from Russell than from Hamilton. So we'll have to wait and see. But certainly both cars, I think, are in a really, really good spot right now. Mercedes came into the season arguably with one of the strongest driver pairings on the grid, I would suggest. So, I think this could be their time to shine. And, we're still essentially in the early part of the championship. We haven't gone too far ahead yet. Mercedes still have, huge opportunities to come. But I'm also expecting a big day for Ferrari, certainly from where Charles Leclerc sits. Sainz, has, in my opinion, I think has struggled a little bit this season. We haven't seen the best of Carlos Sainz, certainly not the Sainz that we saw last year. But nevertheless, he could easily turn it around. But I've put in P7 for this particular one. Sergio Perez, P6. He has been very good this season as well. But I just get the feeling that Silverstone perhaps is more track suited to the likes of Mercedes, Hamilton, Russell. Throw Alonso into the mix as well. I think there is going to be a lot of differences, a lot of variables, certainly with the wet weather coming in. It's going to be very slick underfoot. So let's see how they cope with it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, Checo looked a little bit faster this morning. He was second fastest behind his teammate. Still giving up 0.4 of a second, though. It just felt that Max Verstappen has just got something in the locker that his teammate just cannot seem to match at the moment. But Checo's gone well in qualifying, so who knows? I mean, he might do a bit better. I mean, I've got him down as P3 today, but again, I've kind of gone with the assumption of dry running. And it doesn't look like we're going to get that, at least in Q1. So that could be quite interesting. Just to recap, we'll go through the predictions of the rest of the DNF1 panel. For those of you watching along, you'll see that myself and Courtney have gone with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc on the front row in that order. And then it gets a bit interesting after that. I've gone for Perez P3, Sainz P4, Hamilton P5, and Courtney's gone for Russell P3 ahead of Hamilton and P4 and Sainz P5. Lee's gone a different route. He's gone for Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton, I should say, on pole position with Max Verstappen in P2. Now, that would certainly be a very interesting front row flashbacks to last season when those two came together at Copse Corner. I'm interested to see how they will both cope if they do end up alongside each other on the grid. We'll have to wait and see. Russell P3, Leclerc P4, and Sainz in P5 for Lee. So, George, we're just about to get underway for qualifying. And Silverstone, obviously, as you and I both know rather well, that it's a circuit that really rewards those that are good in high-speed corners and the cars that are fast in a straight line. And, of course, more importantly, cars that can manage their tyres well when they're subject to such heavy, intense loads at those speeds. In your mind today, where is pole position going to be won and lost, assuming that we may get some changeable weather conditions?
I think the final sector, I think, is massive. But then I think if you're talking weather, then the Magnussen-Beckett section is obviously very, very prevalent. To be honest with you, you've got very testing parts of the track in each individual sector. Sector 1, obviously, you've got the first initial bends, turn 3, heading through Abbey Corner into Farm Curve, etc. And then, of course, in Sector 2, you've got the Magnussen-Beckett's bends heading into Sector 3. And it looks all plain sailing when you head down the Hanger Straight. But as soon as you exit Stowe, you've then got Vale and Club in Sector 3, which does make things a little bit more testing. So these heavy braking zones are going to be so important in these conditions. You've got to get your braking zone precise, exactly right in order to maximize, the pace out of the car. It's going to be a true test. And this is why I think Silverstone is so brilliant in both the wet and the dry, because, those braking zones equally test you in the dry as much as they do in the wet. It's just how you can transform your style to each individual condition.
Absolutely. And just looking at the graphic now, obviously they're including the wet weather tyres. So they're certainly expecting the rain to be a factor this afternoon in qualifying. And given that the rain looks like it's just starting to fall, George, it does seem that perhaps the earlier that you get out, the better the conditions might be. So we may see a car park or a cluster of cars all trying to get out and set their lap times as soon as possible in order to preserve the best of the conditions.
Yeah, absolutely right. Just having a look at the track map there, you can easily see from a lot of the corners as to how treacherous and tricky this particular circuit is. Obviously, just as I alluded to, lots of heavy braking zones as much as there are sweeping corners. Very different circuit to anything else on the calendar is Silverstone, and it packs a punch. It's like it has everything. To me, obviously taking the elevation out of it, probably the closest circuit to it is Spa to a degree, I would say, in terms of variation in the corners. But obviously, you don't have to worry about these uphill slopes, downhill slopes that can cause issues with, cornering, such as Eau Rouge Raidillon. You don't have that issue here at Silverstone, but nonetheless, it's very easy to aquaplane as well. You got to be so careful that you don't hit too much standing water. But nevertheless, it is going to be a real test for these drivers. Humidity pretty high too, 73%, and it's absolutely chucking it down right now. I'm watching the people in the grandstands, and they are getting absolutely soaked.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I was just going to say the same thing. I think I saw Mick Schumacher just coming out of the Haas garage looking to park his car at the front of the pit lane exit just to make sure that he's the first one out. It literally could be first across the line, gets the best of the conditions, assuming they keep it on the road, of course. That's the most important thing. You don't want to be going too much. But absolutely crazy stuff. Guys, of course, just before we get underway for qualifying, just a quick recap as to how qualifying works. If you are new to Formula One, we have 3 qualifying sessions, Q1, Q2, and Q3. Q1, we will lose the 5 slowest cars to take the top 15 to Q2. Q2, we will take the next slowest 5 out, will leave us with the top 10, and then we have the pole position shootout in Q3. And in Q1, 18 minutes, 15 minutes for Q2, and 12 minutes is for Q3. I've got to remember that right. And also, not that I imagine it will be relevant today, but the tyre rule, just as a quick reminder, from last season, where you start on the tyres that you set your fastest Q2 lap on, is now no longer relevant. So the drivers will all have a free choice of dry tyres to start the race tomorrow. Although, George, looking at the weather conditions right now and the car park forming at the end of the pit lane, I pretty much doubt that we're going to have to worry about what dry tyres people are thinking about starting the race on tomorrow.
No, I really don't think we're going to have to worry too much about that. I think if this keeps up, we're not going to even be contemplating the slick tyres. I think at that point, obviously the wets are going to be, I think, the big focus of the weekend. Just to have a look at scenes in the Red Bull garage, obviously everyone working hard. And as you alluded to now, the car park as well, with the Haas in front, all the lights are shining. You see there Mick Schumacher's car and the 2 Williams is also at the front. So, Albon and Latifi keen to get out as soon as possible. Certainly if you are in the Williams team right now, or in the Sauber team, for example, or even Alpine or even Aston Martin, I think if you'll look at this weekend as a huge opportunity, so that's exactly what they've got to treat it as, and certainly Mercedes will as well. I think in the context, this will be certainly a race that Mercedes will have their eye on as a potential winning opportunity, given where they know their pace is currently this season. So, there's going to be plenty of shockers. Certainly if the weather keeps on going the way it is, you can see the crowds themselves. They're obviously prepared for the conditions, hats on, coats on as well. But like I say, true test. And I think if you're a Williams driver right now, you're going to want to make use of these, these serious downpours in order to try and maybe upset the balance in qualifying.
Absolutely. And a team like Williams, of course, with their rumoured upgrades, or at least on Alex Albon's car, from what we understand, Williams claiming they could be worth up to a second lap, which will be quite interesting. Practice suggested they were going to be a bit better, but probably not a second per lap. But then we'll have to wait and see. Just looking at the cars now, as we are underway for qualifying now, about 50 seconds in, the 2 Mercedes drivers only just coming through the pit lane exit now. Obviously, you had the 2 Williams having a bit of a squabble there with Mick Schumacher for track position. You've got the 2 Ferraris in there as well. Can't see any of the Red Bulls unless I've missed them at the moment, but we'll have to get through that. But guys, of course, if you are new to the channel and you're liking what we do, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Help us out, try and get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So far, we're on track for that, and it's all down to you lovely lot showing your continued support. So we really do appreciate that. And of course, if you are new, please do continue to follow us on our journey for this year with 4 live streams like this and more great podcasts, of course, where my wonderful guest George Morgan has featured on a few of those, offering his expert insight into Formula One, and of course his own professional ventures as well. Definitely worth a listen and a watch, I must say, although I am a little bit biased on this one. But watching the 2 Mercedes going around now, George, in the wet weather, conditions that normally would suit Sir Lewis Hamilton, considered one of the rainmasters of Formula One at Silverstone. I mean, it reeks of heritage, if I do say so. 8 times a winner here, going for the all-time record at one circuit this weekend. What do you make of his chances of a big result this weekend? Because he does look more like the Sir Lewis Hamilton that we know and love in so far, and at the end of the Canadian Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, I think this weekend, I think if Lewis was to get a big result this weekend. I think obviously there's a lot of critics that he's had over the years where he's won multiple world championships, race wins as well, where they all say it's the power in the car that has decided the fact that he's a great race winner. They seem to forget the history when he was in McLaren and stuff after that with a car that wasn't up to speed necessarily. But you come to this season now, and this is, I tell you what, if he can get a result here this weekend, I think it would hush the critics, silence the critics to a certain degree. As when I watch the cars build up, you just see the surface spray on that water. It just goes to show how quickly it doesn't take long for a circuit to get wet. And certainly because, like you alluded to earlier on, Adam, the fact that Silverstone is so flat, that water is just going to sit there. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to sit there. So there's like I said earlier on, huge opportunities for aquaplaning. You've got to think corners like Copse, Stowe, very, very fast, high-speed corners. It's going to be so easy for the cars to slip. So certainly it takes away, should we say, car performance, car pace a little bit, and sort of heightens the driver's ability to drive a car, certainly in these conditions. So, Hamilton's done it before. He can drive in the wet. I think this could be a huge weekend for him.
Yeah, I mean, these conditions tend to bring out the best in the British drivers. It's something that we all know and love growing up. When you do karting, any British driver or any British person that's ever done karting from a young age will know you had to race in the wet. You just could not avoid it. More weekends than not, you'd find yourself racing in wet conditions. Just watching Charles Leclerc really struggling in the opening section now. He's just coming through the final few corners at Club and Vale to complete his first lap. Purple middle sector at the moment. We've got Albon, Mick Schumacher and Latifi. This should be fastest of them all. 1:47.5 for Leclerc, 2.5 seconds faster than Albon. And as I said, George, these early laps could be critical for the conditions. Everyone on inter tyres at the moment. So, yeah, it's going to be mega important to get these lap times in.
Yeah, absolutely, as soon as possible, because if the rain continues, then of course the track will just get to a point where there's just no grip. And obviously if there's no grip, then you're not going to improve your delta. And Leclerc going out and setting at a first initial lap is obviously key. But now we're already seeing the likes of Alex Albon, Latifi, Mick Schumacher as well into second fastest as well with a 151.311. Albon, though, his time very, very impressive, 49.914. Now usurped by obviously Charles Leclerc as well with a 147.521. Plenty of others, though, out and about. Hamilton obviously still out on track. Many others too. Magnussen right up in the mix as well. So I tell you what, it's Sophie's choice right now as to who's going to go quicker. Guan Yu Zhou obviously up there as well. We've got a yellow flag as well. I'm not quite sure who that was. You might be a little bit ahead of me, to be fair, Adam. So yeah, you might have seen that yellow flag before me.
Well, it's nothing to worry about at the moment. That when someone just went a bit off, not sure who, but they carried on. Just watching now, the two Mercedes. Hamilton goes 3 tenths behind Leclerc. Russell a second off for Lewis. Verstappen does a 1:45.7. 1.8 faster than Leclerc. I mean, the funny thing about Max is Perez just goes 5th fast as well. Must be said, George. He has this amazing ability to just be able to go out anytime and just put a fast lap at the first opportunity of asking. He doesn't need to warm up. He doesn't need to bed in. Kind of like Canada last weekend when it was wet. He was just on it from the get-go.
Yeah, incredible. And he's just that's just raw talent, just in a race car. And obviously Verstappen has raced in karts. He would have had no trouble driving in the wet. So these conditions won't worry. I think Max Verstappen. I mean, he's driven in these sorts of conditions time and time and again, and setting a purple lap almost 2 seconds faster than his championship rival is such a huge statement at this early going. And obviously that will concern the Ferrari garage quite a bit, I think.
It will do, just watching Leclerc come through, and he responds with a 1:43.0, which is 2.7 seconds faster than Max, 4 seconds faster than what he did the first time round. So track evolution is there. The drivers are getting very comfortable with these conditions quite early, George. So we're going to see a lot of times changing as Gasly goes 3rd fastest, followed by Albon, the 2 Hasses and the 2 Alfa Romeos. So yeah, the times are literally tumbling thick and fast at the moment. It could be one of those where if the weather doesn't get much worse, which at the moment seems to be likely as Hamilton goes P2, a second off Leclerc, it could be last man over the line that gets the best possible track conditions.
It could well be. I mean, Hamilton now within a second of Charles Leclerc, so not a bad visit whatsoever. Well, 1.1 should we say at this stage. Max Verstappen still holding on to that top spot. as well, as far as I can see.
Yeah, he's
on
just
my
gone
side.
fastest.
I'm not sure if that's right. Yeah, he's just gone fastest
Yeah,
with a 142.814. 2/10 in it. So like you say, Perez now third fastest, so he's finding a little bit of pace. So Red Bull obviously have brought a decent car this weekend themselves, but you're still seeing the two Silver Arrows still up in the top 5, Russell and Hamilton. Again, and I alluded to this earlier on, Hamilton, I did predict would get third place as we head out of Q3, Russell P5. So I do think this is going to be a big weekend for Mercedes. I tell you another man who needs a big weekend, and that is Mick Schumacher. And he is someone who's going to pinpoint this particular race as a huge example to turn things around.
And he's been going well so far. I mean, he's 8th at the moment as Magnussen just replaces him in that position right now, just down to P9, because times are just tumbling at the moment. Verstappen and Leclerc swapping personal best all the way around the laps at the moment. But yeah, you're right, George. Mick Schumacher does need a strong weekend. He has been going rather well this weekend. He was in the top 10 in FP3 earlier today. So again, it could just come down to if luck's on his side, and he hasn't had much of it. I mean, he was going okay in Canada, qualified really well. We expected him to fall down the order, but then reliability troubles plagued his progress in Canada. So if it's not him having a crash or just having a bad race, it's reliability. So he really does need a good weekend. I really hope that it comes together for him, but right now he's just got to put it to the back of his mind and just do the best job he can right now, and hopefully the fortune will come back to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a talent. He is still a talent. He's got the ability. So he should find it. I mean, it might just be the case, and I alluded to this previously, technically this is his first season in the Haas. I think if you go up against Nikita Mazepin for your first season, and then you move all of a sudden up against an experienced veteran like Kevin Magnussen, it's like chalk and cheese at this point. I've just noticed that Hamilton's gone purple in the first sector, so he's now looking to find some time, as has George Russell, in fact. So we have got some real improvements coming from Team Mercedes right now. So this could be an intriguing session because we'll get to see where the pace is sitting. Obviously, Russell just over 8/10 behind that of Charles Leclerc, and then you've got Lewis Hamilton, who is just under the 9/10 bracket. So both Mercedes can find improvements. Max Verstappen has stolen that purple first sector as well. That's a 31.5 in that initial sector, and it's quite technical at that point because you have got the fast bends at turns 1, 2, and 3, but then all of a sudden you've got to take that farm curve, that left-hander, which is quite a progressive bend. You've got to be careful on the throttle as well because it's so easy to oversteer, and then you've got the long Wellington straight heading in towards Brooklands. But Russell now purple in sector 2, so there is some improvements being found on the circuit. Obviously, despite the rain, they are finding some really, really good areas on the track to generate some pace from.
Absolutely right, and it's important to keep an eye on that as the times come tumbling down. It will be interesting to see if the conditions don't worsen, which at the moment looks like it's stabilised, if anyone takes a gamble and puts new intermediate tyres on, which will give you a lot of performance in the final 7.5 minutes as Verstappen goes purple in the middle sector. So be keen to watch this lap as it comes across. Just looking for the chat, whilst we've got an opportunity, as Russell goes fastest of all. So as you said, George, Mercedes looking very quick at this point in time. We'll have to wait and see what Verstappen does to respond. I think Hamilton didn't improve that time around. Must have had a so-so final 2 parts. We're just looking at the chat. See top 5 from Brenda going Leclerc, Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, and Russell in the top 5 as Verstappen goes 140.4, 1.3 seconds up. Leclerc's done a purple middle sector as well, so we'll have to wait and see what Leclerc comes through when he crosses the line in just a moment. Looking at the chat, Shiro saying, morning from Colorado. Good afternoon, I should say, over in London as Leclerc goes P2, 3/10 off Verstappen. Hope you're doing well, Shiro, all the way over in Colorado. Hopefully the weather is a bit nicer at the moment. You haven't missed much. We are just under 7 minutes to go at the end of Q1. Wet conditions, times are tumbling all the time. However, they look like they've stabilized a little bit, so the last 6.5 minutes could be quite lively. But at the moment, we've got Verstappen P1, Leclerc P2, Russell, then Perez, and then Norris in the top 5. At the moment, the bottom 5, we should talk about Alonso. A bit of a surprise if he ends up there by the end of the session. Mick Schumacher, the 2 Astons, and Gasly.
Just as you say that, Fernando Alonso goes 4th fastest.
Oh, there you go.
So that's incredible. So just literally watching it, and Fernando Alonso, incidentally, 1.2, nearly 1.3 away from Max Verstappen. So that's good pace there from Alpine. And this was sort of the subtle hints I was looking at in practice. And, Alonso, he can perform in these conditions, that's for sure. Latifi now going 11th fastest, and certainly be a big coup for Williams if they can get into Q2. Ocon, obviously, as I alluded to, 7th fastest as well. Incidentally, I think that Latifi time was actually earlier on. I'm just seeing it on my live timing at P15 at this moment. A bit of a sorry state of affairs, though, if you're Daniel Ricciardo right now, Adam, at this stage, 19th fastest and 4.1 seconds off Max Verstappen's current top time, as Leclerc now has gone purple in the first and second sector. So he is finding some serious pace at this moment in time.
Yeah, Ricciardo was really struggling this morning, and he's improved of late. His pace has been a lot more representative, a lot closer to Norris, but this weekend, as we expected Lando to be a lot better at Silverstone, as Leclerc only does a 140.6, so a bit closer to Max, but he obviously had a not so great final sector to not go fastest of all at this point. But you're right, Ricciardo does need to find the pace. For whatever reason, it's not working, whether it's dry or wet. Down in P19, he desperately needs to improve now as Ocon comes through the final corner. Where's this going to put him? Improves, but only stays 9th at the moment. We've just got under 5 minutes left to go. We've got Stroll, Vettel, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, and Mick Schumacher currently in the pits in the bottom 5, although I'm expecting Mick to put on some fresh inters, which might get him through. This track is really ramping up now, George, as Zhou goes P5.
Yeah, Aston Martin struggling as well. Stroll and Vettel currently in the elimination zone. Stroll right on the bubble of safety, 0.146 away. But they've got a lot of work to do, that's for sure. Tsunoda as well in 18th, who has been certainly vastly improved on what we saw last season. He was ahead of Gasly on quite a few occasions this season. Gasly himself not overly safe, 14th fastest, as we now see more and more cars venture out onto the track. Obviously, Max Verstappen has just gone purple in the second sector again, so he's finding yet even more pace. So again, we're seeing this battle between Leclerc and Verstappen in terms of pace here at Silverstone. Certainly Carlos Sainz now in 3rd spot, with Russell in behind in 4th. Hamilton tumbling down the order now. He's into 10th place, but I'm sure he'll be looking just to maybe set another safe lap just to make sure he gets into Q2. I can't imagine he will get eliminated out of Q1, but crazy things have happened. But encouraging signs to see Sebastian Vettel up into 11th as well. So good positive signs there from Aston Martin.
Well, Max Verstappen's just done 3 purple sectors and done a 139.9. So he's the first man in the 140s, 6.5 tenths clear of Leclerc, and then another, 1.5 seconds clear of practically everybody else after Leclerc. So, yes, getting very interesting now. Everybody on track right now. Mick Schumacher just coming out of the pits. I think Stroll and Latifi and Kevin Magnussen all looks like they've put on fresh intermediate tyres. So we could watch out for those guys, George, because they could be on very low fuel, whereas everyone's been running around for a little while, and there's pretty much no time left to change your tyres if you're not already doing that right now.
No, that's right. And, in this very fine point of qualifying, this is when things get desperate. Drivers then start putting balls to the wall, and they've got to try and come up with something radical in order to try and get themselves up into the top end. Obviously, there's plenty of drivers there, names that we wouldn't have necessarily expected. I mean, Mick Schumacher currently sat in 20th, Daniel Ricciardo in 19th. There's definitely some more pace in that McLaren. I mean, Norris has proved that. He's in the top 10 at this moment in time. Alonso's dropped down to 10th, but I don't think he'd be too disappointed with where he is on track. I mean, I got to give a hat tip to Guan Yu Zhou, currently ahead of his teammate Valtteri Bottas, 7th against 8th. As now we see Russell ahead of Perez. Leclerc's dropped down the field slightly, overtaken by his teammate Sainz, and Hamilton second fastest. So again, the order getting jumbled up. And this is the whole thing to do with wet conditions. Obviously, the variables are kicking in. Nothing's the same. Every lap is different. So it really does put a huge, huge test on the drivers at this point.
Yeah, we are getting to that point now where the track conditions are getting a lot better, and people starting to put in some good lap times. So we're going to start seeing those variables in action as Ricciardo coming through the final couple of corners now through Club and Vale section. He has been faster than Magnussen on this lap, so hopefully this will get him through into Q2. It's only 13th, and I'll be honest with you, George, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get another lap in, because how much of the battery he would have used, how much of the tyres he would have used, I'm not sure if that time's going to be good enough to get him through.
No, I'm not convinced on that one. And look at the names you've got underneath. Kevin Magnussen, I can't imagine he'll be staying in 16th fastest. Mick Schumacher needs to find something. I mean, I'm not sure whether he's venturing out on track. He is. He's actually gone improved in the second sector. So Mick Schumacher could very easily get himself out as well. Fingers crossed. As now we're also seeing some other names. Pierre Gasly in 18th. There's just far too many names that should be out of the bottom zone. So Ricciardo is in a lot of trouble right now.
Yeah, very much so. Mick Schumacher comes across the line, 17th. He doesn't improve. Has he got enough, though, to do another lap? We'll have to wait and see how much of his battery power he would have used. Magnussen goes 10th fastest, so hopefully that'll be enough for him. Verstappen, purple in Sector 1, so he's improving at the moment. Ricciardo on the bubble. We're on board with Pierre Gasly now, as he needs to try and get himself out, as AlphaTauri have really been struggling in qualifying of late, so hopefully for him, he may be able to do something about that as he comes through the final corners. Now, really squirmish off the end of the corner. That car just really struggles in the slow corners, but he goes 8th fastest. That's more like it from Pierre Gasly now. Alonso goes P9. Sebastian Vettel, currently in the bottom 5, comes across the line. Can he get out of there? Only 15th, which puts Albon back into the bottom 5. Tsunoda comes across the line, goes P12. Vettel is now out of qualifying, but owing to that, Ricciardo back into 13th. So he's managed to save himself at the depth. We've got Latifi on the bubble as Leclerc goes fastest of all on his final run. So that's encouraging for the Ferrari drivers. Verstappen smashes it. So much for encouragement. Verstappen has pretty much ended that one, going 7/10 faster than Leclerc. So that one's certainly going to hurt. Ocon now coming over the line. Can he get himself out of the bottom 5? He does. Goes 9th. Magnussen now on the bubble as Latifi gets through into 15th for now. Mick Schumacher's on a time. Perez goes 4th fastest. The times are changing like clockwork, guys. Honestly, I'm struggling to keep up right now, as my commentator friend will probably attest to that one from his own experience, as Mick Schumacher does not improve. So he is out of qualifying. Albon is the only other driver on a lap that could get out of the bottom 5. He doesn't. So despite having the upgraded car from what we've been hearing, it's Nicholas Latifi for Williams that gets out of Q1. Well, look, what a shock there, George. We've got Albon, Magnussen, Vettel, Mick Schumacher and Stroll, but it's Latifi that outqualifies his teammate for the first time on merit this season.
And have a look in the top 10. 2 Alfa Romeos currently sat in 7th and 8th. Guan Yu Zhou, impressive performance from Guan Yu Zhou, 7th fastest at this point in time. Latifi, what a session. He'd be delighted with that effort, managing to get into Q2, but also beating his teammate Alex Albon, who arguably has been, certainly keeping the Canadian down for the majority of the season. We saw the stats at the start of the broadcast. And now here at this point, it is Latifi going into Q2 with Albon getting eliminated for Williams. So Ricciardo, just by the skin of his teeth, managing to get into 14th place. I still wouldn't be convinced if I'm a Daniel Ricciardo fan right now. At the end of the day, if you are P14, that's an elimination out of Q2. Tsunoda managing to get up into 13th. Gasly managing to get into the 11th fastest. But of course, if I was Pierre Gasly, I'd be looking to get into that top 10. But I think the stars of the show were definitely Alfa Romeo. Guan Yu Zhou in 7th, Bottas in 8th. What a performance.
Yeah, absolutely right. And let's not forget Max Verstappen. Just when Leclerc thought it might be a 2-horse race. I mean, it still could be. Of course, conditions could change. But Max Verstappen going 7/10 faster than the next fastest, Charles Leclerc. So plenty of room for improvement needed from the competition if they're going to stop Max this afternoon. And yeah, absolutely right, George. What a result for Nicholas Latifi. I mean, yes, a lot of people might come at me and say, well, Latifi beat Albon in Imola, although I should stress that was owing to Albon having a brake fire, so he wasn't able to compete in qualifying. So I think we'll give this a big win for Go Tifi, as some people have jokingly said.
Definitely.
Great stuff
But
from him.
Go Tifi.
Yeah. All aboard the Go TV train. Why not? I mean, great. And obviously, you know, on Alex Albon's, one of his home patches, I suppose, technically speaking, it's the hasn't got a race back home in Thailand. So we'll let this one be his home Grand Prix. But just to recap from the 15 that went through, we had Max Verstappen, fastest of all, followed by Charles Leclerc, then George Russell to complete the top 3, Sainz, Hamilton, Perez, the 2 Alfa Romeos, Zhou Guan Yu and Valtteri Bottas in 7th and 8th, Norris P9, Alonso 10th, Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, and Latifi completing the top 15, with Albon, Magnussen, Vettel, Mick Schumacher, and Lance Stroll eliminated from Q1. So quite a lot of excitement there, George, already for Q1. We've got 2 more sessions to go. The track we're not hearing of any more rain that we know of. We might get some, but in your mind from that first session, despite how close it seemed between the top 6, or granted we have got them all there, we might want it to be dry if it's going to be competitive, because at the moment it looks like Max Verstappen, at least other than Charles Leclerc, is in a league of his own in these wet conditions.
Yeah, I mean, 7/10. I mean, I know a lot of people would look at that and say, look, there's a very fine margin, but in the context of Formula One, that's massive, absolutely massive. I mean, we all know Verstappen's talent, but at the same time, if you're Charles Leclerc and you've got a Ferrari underneath you that certainly looks like it's got the pace, then you've got to be doing better. I mean, I would say in terms of the top 5, I would say obviously Verstappen, you've got to give him a huge hat tip for his efforts in that first session, but also look at the Mercedes team, 3rd fastest and 5th fastest. And that's exactly where they need to be. They need to have both those cars up in the thick of it. Certainly with George Russell on the 2nd row, Hamilton on the 3rd row. If it was to finish like that in Q3, I think Toto Wolff would be very, very pleased. I think that would be a great position for them to be in. I think probably the biggest devastation out of Q1 is probably the Haas team. I think if you're Haas right now and you're Gunther Steiner, you are going to be absolutely frustrated with the performance of both Kevin Magnussen and Mick Schumacher. I never expected Kevin Magnussen to be eliminated from Q1, personally speaking.
Yeah, it's such a shame for Haas. And I asked this question on my podcast, on the DNF1 podcast, in the week building up to the British Grand Prix. And I might ask the same thing to you, George, given the relevance of what's going on with Haas. But given how good that car looked relative to the rest of the competition at the start of the season, with K-Mag getting in the top 4? Or something like that, and then obviously putting a few good performances together. The fact that they haven't been able to capitalise when they've been in more positions like that, owing to mistakes of their drivers or reliability issues, do you fear right now, with the development curve very much against Haas, owing to the financial restrictions they have compared to the competition, that they may have already missed the opportunity or their peak of performance for this season to get more big points?
I think I definitely agree with that. I think the problem with Haas, it's a continuous issue. It's either the car isn't right or the drivers don't get it right. And they can never get or catch the perfect wave that comes around. It's a real shame. They always seem to have something that gets in the way. But, on this particular occasion, I really couldn't see what the barriers were for Haas this weekend. I mean, whether they built the car to be suitable in the wet conditions, I don't know. Maybe this was a bit of a frustration area for Haas. I have no idea. But the fact that Kevin Magnussen wasn't able to extract anything more out of the car is pretty perplexing. I mean, I'm looking at the gap now between Schumacher and Magnussen himself, 6.5 tenths of a second, which, it's quite a vast difference. If you're Mick Schumacher, you need to be matching K-Mag toe for toe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good barometer for Mick Schumacher, who's a guy that we've often said throughout his Formula One career so far, or throughout his entire career in motorsport, that he's a guy that isn't always expected to deliver at the first opportunity, but he learns and grows over time. And when he's more established and more comfortable in his surroundings, he is a formidable driver. Unfortunately, Formula One is a lot more unforgiving than that. And you could argue to a degree that Nikita Mazepin was not the right measuring stick to him, and it was probably too easy for him. And now he's up against someone like K-Mag, who is a very good driver in his own right, and I think a good competition. But we do need to see more for Mick Schumacher, I agree. Just underway now for Q2. Just over 14 minutes to go now. Just a reminder of this session, guys. 15 runners, the top 15 from Q1 will now be competing to try and get in the top 10. We will lose the slowest 5 cars before the pole position shootout. And it'll be interesting to see, George, how the weather's going to hold up in this session, because we had rain before the start of quali. Everyone went out on the inters. The conditions were steadily improving as they continue to be doing so. I can only see light spits of rain as even not even that. So there could be a point, perhaps not in this session, but the next one, where there may be a switch to dry tyres of this one if someone takes a gamble like we saw George Russell do in Canada last weekend.
Well, it certainly looks like it's getting brighter at this point. I mean, obviously, I'm about an hour and a half away from the circuit or so, but there's blue sky here. It was looking grey before we started this broadcast, but it's all of a sudden turned very, very bright. A lot of sunshine. And if I'm looking at my screens correctly and looking at the broadcast cameras, it looks to be getting brighter over at Silverstone as well. So it could be the case that they ditch the wets heading in towards Q3. That's if obviously the track dries enough, but obviously with the cars heading out now into Q2, albeit on intermediate tires, they will kick up some of that spray and warm the track up. So hopefully that will help get rid of some of that standing water. So if we can get into Q3 on slick tires, then that presents a very, very unique opportunity, I would say, for the likes of Alpine and various others, should they be able to get out of Q2. I'm highly predicting Alfa Romeo and Alpine to be in the mix here.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about brighter conditions. It certainly is not looking bright and sunny at Silverstone right now. And plus, the track temperatures aren't even that warm. So I'll be honest with you. I know I said we might get dry running. I'm not sure if that's going to be likely at the moment. It could be like this for the rest of qualifying at least. So we'll have to wait and see. Just looking through the chat now whilst we've got a quick opportunity to do so. To say hello to our friends over in Australia. We've got James and Brendo all the way in Australia right now. Glad to have you on. Not sure what the time is. Probably quite late, guys. So thanks for staying up late to watch the British Grand Prix qualifying. I'm sure you guys were absolutely loving it when we were all getting up very early in the morning watching Melbourne, of course. All the diehard F1 fans will know what I'm talking about. But of course, we're quite lucky, George, based in Europe, that we do get a lot of favourable viewing times for a lot of these races, of course. But nonetheless, we'll move on. Just looking through the 1892 Reds podcast, going with Max, Leclerc, Sainz, Perez and Russell. In their top five, we've got Chris Welch as well. Hi, Chris. Going Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Perez and Sainz. Also just a bit of a switch between third and fourth there. Just looking through the field now, George. I can see Norris on a lap at the moment with Perez and Carlos Sainz behind him. What have you made of Lando Norris this weekend? Because he's been quietly going about his business and looking relatively good, fighting for that best of the rest position along with Fernando Alonso and his teammate Esteban Ocon.
Well, I think I think Norris is it's been an interesting season for McLaren because obviously the car isn't what it was last year. We saw that from the beginning of the season, I think, where they were struggling in qualifying at Bahrain. But coming here now, it's a very interesting sort of set of affairs because, of course, you've got Ricciardo who's currently struggling. Norris, obviously, doing what he can, I think, with what's underneath him. And I think he's doing well. Obviously, he's beating his teammate, which is very, very important. But we'll have to see whether that dent in his face will cause a bit of an impact. Obviously, given the fact that Daniel Ricciardo assaulted him with a hopper, a space hopper. But yeah, nevertheless, still great to see him out on track. And I'd firmly put him in the frame to potentially get into Q3. And I think if you're Lando Norris, that has got to be the goal. Let's get the car into Q3 and try and qualify in the top 10 because, of course, the alt strat essentially is a thing of the past now because, of course, you've got free tire choice now as opposed to what you will have in Q2. So there's no point in trying to get that P11 spot anymore.
Yeah, absolutely right, George. And just a sort of update on the weather, it looks like it is starting to rain again. So the track conditions are deteriorating. So these early laps could be the peak of the conditions as Verstappen goes a second clear of everybody right now. Perez second, Alonso third, Leclerc in now fifth as Hamilton does a 142.6. So the conditions are starting to get worse now. So these early laps, George, could be critical.
Yeah, I think so. And already seeing Verstappen showing the pace, as you alluded to, a 141.486 with Perez in second place. Red Bull want to keep that. As I say that, Verstappen's just gone purple again in the first sector. So he's finding more and more pace with we're now well into the 10-minute mark now. Daniel Ricciardo, incidentally, still in 13th, but Lando Norris has just gone purple in sector 2. So he's found quite a bit of pace. I'd firmly expect Verstappen to steal that away from him, though, as we're now watching certainly the cars make their way through. I think, though, but looks of it, as we see the updates, Norris has gone second fastest. That is incredible.
Wow.
So Norris managing to park his car ahead of Sergio Perez, a 141.821. Despite the torrential downpour, they're still finding that little bit more as I see Verstappen's just stolen the second sector purple time.
Either that or Norris has found a shortcut there. Perhaps that bang on the head with a space hopper has done him a world of good. Although if you haven't seen it, I recommend it, guys. It's absolutely hilarious stuff Indeed. Just seeing something interesting on social media whilst we've got a brief moment. Just Richard Spanish Ready on Twitter, George, going, Latifi's team radio saying, why are there only 15 cars on track at the moment? In reference to, obviously, him not being in Q2 very often. Leclerc goes fastest, as I make, or steal someone else's joke. And Verstappen responds 6 tenths faster than Leclerc. So literally Verstappen is, by the looks of it, getting a nice slipstream off Leclerc, and it's obviously worth quite a bit to him at the moment. And now Hamilton goes P2. So in these conditions, George, you certainly can't rule out Sir Lewis Hamilton from being at the very least on the front row.
No, I would not write him off. I mean, I've predicted he'll go or start P3 on the grid tomorrow. But I think if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan right now, we all know how he can perform, certainly in UK weather conditions, and not to mention Silverstone itself. Obviously, Verstappen is well known to have the pace this season. I think Red Bull have just played their cards absolutely right this season. Verstappen, certainly a raw talent. We saw him win a world championship last year. He's come here and really this year is a big proving ground for Verstappen, because he, as far as he's concerned, that first title will always be tainted. Despite him managing to get there, he'll always have in the back of his mind that what happened in Abu Dhabi will live in the back of his mind. You know, I think what Verstappen wants this season is a title win, an absolute title win. And I think that's what he's striving for. But obviously with Hamilton breathing down your neck, it's never going to be that easy. He's now second fastest, a 141.062, only 4 tenths away from Verstappen. So, you know, I think Mercedes have come to party this weekend.
Yeah, certainly much. And of course, the last thing that Max Verstappen would want is a Sir Lewis Hamilton that has practically nothing to lose at this point. I don't think in his own mind he probably feels the championship is on at this point in time. You never know, things may change very rapidly over the course of this season, but with Max Verstappen so far away at the moment, the last thing he'd want to do is go up against Lewis Hamilton with everything to lose, and Lewis Hamilton with absolutely nothing to lose, to try and make a bold move to overtake him in the race. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to say it, but that was literally the only thing in my mind that I could think of. So we'd have to see. It would be interesting to see how Max handles that situation if the two of them are on the front row tomorrow. If Lewis makes a bit of a dive bomb to take the lead, would Max just let him go and then try and pick him off later? Or would Max be as aggressive as he was in 2021? We haven't seen that side of Verstappen this season so in his battles with Leclerc as of yet. So it might be interesting to see what happens when Lewis Hamilton is alongside him with absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, who knows? I mean, like you say, I mean, it might be the case that Verstappen maybe feels that he doesn't have to do what he did last season. I mean, there's a very different set of affairs ahead now. Obviously, Red Bull have got a different performance package this season. They look by far one of the more dominant teams alongside that of Ferrari, who I'd argue haven't really shown that pace so far in qualifying. One team, as I alluded to earlier, that I think have really brought some real cards to the table is Alfa Romeo. Currently watching some onboard footage of Valtteri Bottas, and obviously currently 12th place at this moment in time. But at the same time, you've got to look at Guan Yu Zhou, who's currently sat in 9th spot. Again, still hitting those top 10 numbers. They're still there. They're regularly there. I give Latifi a bit of credit too. He's currently P10.
Yeah, and at the moment, there's more and more rain coming down. So if the track conditions don't improve, Latifi, or Go-Tifi as we should now rightly call him, may end up in Q3 at this point, which would be remarkable given the current state of his future at the moment, with rumours of Oscar Piastri having his seat for next season. We expected that to be confirmed at this weekend's race. As per usual, when we predict news to be confirmed, it never tends to happen when we expect it to. So this would be a great opportunity for Latifi, if this is his last British Grand Prix in F1, to really lay down a marker and say to his team, I'm not done just yet.
God, those screens don't look too good. I have to say, I'm looking at the pit wall, and the rain is cascading over the top of the landscape here at Silverstone. This weather doesn't look like it's going to improve, folks. So I have to tell you, it looks like we're going to be in for a bit of a whitewash. But looking across the top end, Verstappen still on top, the only man in the 140s, might I add, 4 tenths clear of Lewis Hamilton still. Charles Leclerc not improving in the first sector. In fact, I think he lost time in the first sector, as has Carlos Sainz. Fernando Alonso in the top 10, 7th fastest, ahead of Sergio Perez. Now, I'm not sure whether Perez has had an issue or something, because he's just registered a 64 in the first sector, which is nearly double Yeah, there's
Yeah,
got to be an issue. But there
there's
you have it.
Latifi's gone wide as well at turn 3, I believe. Yeah, he's at turn 3. And yeah, the track conditions don't look great. Verstappen just had an off coming out the end of Maggots and Beckett's as well. He's gone into the pit lane. So I'll be honest with you, George, I don't want to tempt fate right now, but Tiffy could find himself in the top, pole position shootout. And I mean, all bets are off at that point if he manages to do that. Imagine if he was to get on pole of all places.
Well, if he gets out early enough, and then all of a sudden there's a massive thunderstorm, he might be okay, but we'll have to wait and see. But no, as things stand, Latifi is looking really, really, really good at this stage. Obviously, the water is still very much a factor on the track right now. We got Gasly out on an outlap. He's literally got to do anything he can to try and find 0.4 of a second. So we'll have to wait and see. But obviously, a lot of drivers now finding it very difficult to manipulate their way around this circuit. I'm just looking at the top 5 times. No one has improved on their previous lap. So I would say Verstappen may as well pack up and stay in his garage at this point. A 140.655 with conditions as they are. I think that's going to be very hard to beat here in Q2.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what's happening at the moment. Literally everybody from Norris down are out on track at the moment trying to improve or at least stay in the top 10. We've got Gasly, Bottas, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, and Ocon in the bottom 5 at the moment. Esteban Ocon was expecting to try and be one of the best of the rest. Currently finds himself P15 with only probably one opportunity left to go. As I said, it literally is a matter of getting the lap done at the right time and in the conditions. And I feel for the guys down there. I mean, Bottas looks like he may lose out from this. Ricciardo, you could argue to a degree as well, although his pace has not been really in the top 10 so far this weekend. And Ocon, another driver that could be caught out by the conditions. And that we've got Latifi and Zhou Guanyu well established in the top 10 and looking in good shape right now, George, it must be said, to go through the Q3.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm feeling good about my prediction now, to be honest with you. Obviously with Alonso in the mix because he's currently 7th fastest. It could well be. I mean, obviously Leclerc is going to have to try and pull something out the bag in Q3, but Verstappen looking so strong right now, and you'd be hard pressed to bet against him. A 140.655, 4/10 clear of Hamilton, nearly 6/10 clear of Leclerc. But the way Latifi is currently sat, he is looking so strong. I mean, if you're in the bottom 5 right now, it's going to be a huge ask for you to turn that around and get into that top 10. The spray being kicked up off the circuit, it just doesn't seem to be improving, Adam.
No, it doesn't at all. I'm just watching Yuki Tsunoda on his fight. He's had a bit of he just sort of had a bit of a snap of oversteer. Ocon as well went a bit wide, going down to Brooklands, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing anyone improve at the moment, George. We are literally in the presence of greatness right now with Tiffy about to go into Q3. I can't say I woke up this morning thinking I'd be saying on this live stream that Nicholas Tiffy is going to get into Q3. Yet here we are with just over 10 seconds to go. It's happening. Unless Ricciardo can pull out the lap of his life in these conditions, it's happening, George.
Yeah, well, at this moment in time, he's not improved in the first sector, so it's looking good for Latifi right now. And incidentally, looking at the sector 1 times, I mean, Latifi is still out on track, but it's not looking good for Ricciardo at the moment. The Honey Badger is well off in terms of an improvement. He's only a mere nearly 0.5 faster than that of Tsunoda in the second sector. I'm not overly convinced that there's enough in the tank there for Daniel Ricciardo in order to beat Latifi. I mean, fair play to Nicky. That is huge, certainly for Williams. Gasly still out and about looking to improve as well. But it just seems to me that the times are certainly stagnating outwards at this point, and there is no one making any inroads.
And that is the end. No one's improving. There's hugs and applause going on in the Williams garage, guys. And no, I am not making this up. Nicholas Latifi, running the spec Williams, not the upgraded one, has qualified for Q3 in the British Grand Prix. The man looks likely to not be in Formula One next season, is in Q3. And wet weather aside, George, I mean, that is just unbelievable stuff. Fair play to the man. What a job.
That's a great story. I mean, obviously, Latifi can pull off these performances. I remember Hungary last year. where he was battling for the points. And it was amazing to see his tenacity, his sheer bravery in the car. He's done it again, and certainly Williams can dream and enjoy these moments. I mean, if anything, this probably puts the light on Alex Albon's performance in terms of the upgraded Williams this weekend. Obviously, as you said, Latifi coming in with basically the stock car for Williams and managing to get it into the top 10. That is just a sensational drive, and also a good use of his experience and I suppose knowledge in order to get that early lap in, because it's so crucial in conditions such as these. You've got to maximize your performance when the track is good.
Absolutely right. Now, guys, of course, just to recap the top 10 and the bottom 5, because we got a little bit excited focusing on Latifi too much, but then could you blame us? So here we go. It's Verstappen, fastest in Q1, fastest in Q2, looking very strong at the moment, but it's Sir Lewis Hamilton that managed to get into P2 for Q2 at least. This is not the grid confirmed as of yet. We've still got one more session to go. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz for Ferrari 3rd and 4th, Russell 5th, Norris 6th, Alonso 7th, Perez only 8th, but he's through. Zhou in 9th, Nicholas Latifi in the Spec Williams in P10. He will be in Q3. I'm not sure how he's going to feel about that one, but he's certainly going to have a go. And the bottom 5, we've got Gasly out, Bottas, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, and Esteban Ocon, a driver we thought was going to be well in the top 10 this afternoon. He is P15 and out of qualifying. So a huge blow to Ocon there, George, getting caught out by the conditions.
Yeah, he did indeed. I mean, obviously, we can't say the same for his teammate. Obviously, Alonso in the top 10, so credit to him for that. But I think Ocon will be disappointed. I mean, Alpine have a decent package this season. I didn't give them a huge amount of promise going into the start of the season, but they proved me wrong to some degree. I mean, Alonso himself, he's just the man you need in situations such as this, managing to pull off some serious performances, some crucial performances in qualifying, and now they stand a great chance of securing a really, really strong position out of qualifying. And if you look at the fact that he beat Sergio Perez, he wasn't hugely far away or massively far away from Lando Norris, around about 2.5 tenths, somewhere over that. So, Alonso still very much in the thick of things. And I'm hoping he can try and nestle in this P4 spot. We'll have to wait and see. But again, Mercedes, that pace, Russell 5th and Hamilton in 2nd, they're going to be so encouraged with that.
Absolutely right. And of course, with these conditions changing at the moment, it literally could be down to the opportunity who can get the right lap in the right conditions. Right now, it does seem that Max Verstappen is the heavy favourite for pole position. But George, now that we're waiting just to see who's going to be on pole position, we've got a few minutes to go before Q3 starts. Where's your head at with this one? Is it Verstappen's to lose at this point, or do you feel that we could see a surprise from perhaps a Ferrari or maybe even a Mercedes, or perhaps maybe Latifi for pole?
I don't know. I would love to see it. Look, I would love to see it. It'd be a great Cinderella story, Nicholas Latifi on pole position. But I think, if I'm honest, my head tells me that Verstappen is going to be on pole, I think, for this one. I mean, my initial prediction was that Leclerc would be quickest with Verstappen alongside him on the front row. I think that could still be your likely front row. I still think it could be Verstappen and Leclerc on the front row, but it will be the other way around. I think Verstappen pole, Leclerc 2nd. I would expect Hamilton to be in 3rd fastest. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's where my head is at right now. I would also, I'm going to throw the hat in the ring and say that Alonso will get a P4. I think he'll just qualify ahead of George Russell.
Well, it's certainly not out of the question. It looks like it's stopped raining for the time being. I've seen the umbrellas have gone down now, so the track conditions will start to ramp up a little bit and improve. But again, with the conditions fluctuating as they are, it could literally be the best conditions at the beginning of the session. So if you get your lap time in early and nail it, you could find yourselves in a very lucrative qualifying position. But guys, let me know in the chat below who you think is going to get on pole position as we're about to start Q3. And before we get underway, just a quick reminder, guys, if you are new to the channel and you like what we do, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, really helps us out a lot. So we really appreciate your support. And of course, we've got great podcasts as well. We've got race reviews, previews, and all of the latest news, talking points, and gossip in the world of Formula One, going twice a week. We usually upload. So make sure to join us for a couple of those. It'd be really great to have you on board with that. And yeah, plenty more great content in the future. George, before we get underway, as it looks like we're back to just a few minutes, obviously you've got your own ventures in Euro Formula and GT Open. Obviously, you're going to the Hungaro Ring next weekend. So how's that all going down in Euro Formula? Are you looking forward to that?
Oh, massive. We've got quite an exciting championship brewing. I think Oliver Goethe certainly seems to be the man to beat right now. Obviously, driving in that familiar Golf livery that we saw on the McLaren car only a matter of 2 seasons ago, and has done an extremely good job of winning the majority of the races. He comes into Hungaroring in great form. I spoke to him the other day on Instagram, and this is the first time he's come into the Hungaroring, so big pressure for Oliver Goethe. But GT Open, lots to look forward to in that. We've just come off the back of Team Oregon winning the big endurance race at Spa, but that we're coming to Hungary now, and Leonardo Polcini and Ben Jahites are going to be certainly looking to try and go 2 from 2 in the last 2 meetings. Obviously, there's other cars to look out for. I would anticipate a stronger performance from Optimum Motorsport. I think Nick Moss and Joe Osborne are going to be up there fighting. So lots to look at. And I think we're going to be in for an exciting GT Open and Euro Formula battle, certainly at Hungary. But I think on obviously we're going to be witnessing something a little bit different. I think in this Formula One event, I think we're going to be seeing lots of conditions affecting this race weekend. And I'm hoping that this man, Fernando Alonso, does some business, certainly, because certainly in these kinds of conditions, he's the man you want behind your wheel. And I do believe there's got to be a P4 in Fernando Alonso here somewhere.
There could well be. Before we go green for Q3, actually, we've just gone green now, actually, as the drivers are coming out. We've got the 2 Ferraris ahead of Zhou Guan Yu coming out of the garage now. George, just a quick plug of your content and of your work. Where can they find you on the socials? And of course, if they want to check out your great work and also the series, the GT Open and Euro Formula series, where can they go to get all that?
Well, you can head over to, if you want to find me, at George Morgan TV. That is where you find me on Twitter, Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook and also find me on YouTube as well if you want to. Obviously, I haven't posted much content on there lately, but there will be some in the future. But we've also got the GT Open channel, so you can find the International GT Open online. They've got a website. Also, at the same time, they've got a Twitter and they've got an Instagram feed as well. Just type in International GT Open and it will come up. Euro Formula, very much the same. Just go Euro Formula as well. I've got some more updates coming out as well this month. I've got I've got Hungary coming up now in the next 2 weeks, but I've also got 2 other dates. I'm traveling to 2 other countries this month as well. So there's lots of stuff happening, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
It's fantastic stuff, and I highly recommend it, guys. It's some great stuff. And of course, if Formula One doesn't really feel the cravings for motorsport, definitely check out those 2 series with George Morgan on the broadcast as well, doing a fantastic job as always. Now, of course, we just started Q3 just over 10.5 minutes ago. Everyone doing their first out laps. It looks like we could be in a situation, George, where the conditions, once again, as we've said a few times already, could be the key factor. These early laps could decide who's on pole position this afternoon. As you see, the team radio for signs, possible shower right at the end of Q3. So this could be the critical lap right now that the guys are on. And it literally could be anyone's game right now. It may not necessarily be Max Verstappen's to lose, but it could literally come down to who nails their first opportunity before the rain starts to come down.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this point, it's anybody's game at this point in qualifying. I mean, obviously the spray is still prevalent. I mean, I'm not sure how much the rain is coming down. Obviously the weather is pretty much clear here. I can't see a lot of downpour. Obviously a lot going on the track, and this is going to be tricky for the drivers.
Well, Max has had a bit of a wobble before the start of his lap. So it shows the standing water is still a problem out there for even Max Verstappen, the world champion. So this could get interesting. He may have compromised this lap already by not being able to get a decent exit. He's still really struggling to hold the car together as he goes through Abbey. So, yeah, right now it could be anyone's game right now. We're watching Leclerc, we're watching Verstappen, and it could literally come. It could be Hamilton, it could be Russell, it could even be Latifi.
It could be. I mean, looking at the weather right now, apparently there's a possibility of showers towards the end of Q3. So that could cause an issue. So it could mean that these first laps are so crucial to the point where it's going to be vital for these drivers to nestle in competitive lap times early on. So this is a very, very important point of qualifying. I can see already that Latifi is coming to the end of his lap shortly. We've got Perez as well that's beginning his. He's just stolen the fastest Sector 1 as well. Leclerc's currently fastest in Sector 2, but I think Perez will be the first man to take the top. Scratch that. Alonso has just gone fastest of all in the first sector in P7 currently on our classification. Obviously, that is going to be updated very, very shortly. But Verstappen, he's going to be coming around first. And I hate to say it, his is not going to be the fastest time as Sainz now crosses and sets a 151.
Yeah, neither's Leclerc, because Leclerc after the first two... Oh, Max has had a spin. Max Verstappen spins at Stowe corner, so he's ruined that attempt. Well, you said it wasn't going to be his best lap, George, and he certainly won't go fastest there. Leclerc goes fastest, but he was 2 seconds slower than Max after the first two sectors, so Verstappen won't go... Well, he's actually not too far off Leclerc there, despite that spin there, but there you go. Even the world champion is not impenetrable to those kind of mistakes. As Zhou goes pole, provisional pole for Zhou Guanyu. I mean, China would be absolutely thrilled if Zhou Guanyu managed to get on pole. As Lando Norris goes second fastest. Here comes Sir Lewis Hamilton. He hasn't had the best of first attempts, and despite Verstappen's spin, cannot beat that lap time. Russell goes P5 ahead of Verstappen. Here comes Checo, Sergio Perez. What can he do? Only fourth. Where's Alonso? Alonso was purple in the middle sector. Could Fernando Alonso get it on pole position? He's going to smash it, and he does. 146.2. Well. Fernando Alonso. Wow.
3.2 seconds clear of Guan Yu Zhou, and he was purple in Sector 1 as well until that was stolen off him. Max Verstappen has since stolen the purple Sector 1 time. At this point, a 32.9 is where he currently hits it, 33.8 for Alonso. That says more about Alonso's time than it says about Verstappen right now. Leclerc currently fourth. He has just set a purple Sector 2, so he's improving. But incredible to see that from Alonso. That is a very competitive time because we were seeing a lot of the times in the 46s in Q2. So already he hits that right from the get-go. That's going to apply a lot of pressure on the other drivers on this classification.
Yeah, they're all improving now. Sainz was actually a 10th up on Alonso. There's a yellow flag out. So Sainz just gone fastest. There's a yellow flag in Sector 1. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there as Leclerc comes through the final corner. He was a second up on his teammate. There you go, 1.2 seconds up. Verstappen's gone purple in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Really aggressive over at Club and Vale. Surely Verstappen, is this going to be fastest? No. So he lost a lot of time in that final part of the lap. So at the moment, Leclerc ahead of Verstappen by 0.04 of a second, and then Sainz, Alonso, Zhou, Norris, Perez, Russell, Hamilton, and Latifi, who hasn't set a lap time yet. Just looking at a replay of Verstappen here, George, coming through the final part. Oh, he went really wide, went off the road again. So that's why Max Verstappen is not P1 at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. It's just, these little moments will certainly hinder him. Certainly if the rain comes cascading down later on, it's going to apply more pressure on Max Verstappen, as we're seeing at this moment in time him go, well, he's literally just under half a tenth slower than that of Charles Leclerc right now. And has since gone purple in the first sector. So, there's still lots of opportunity certainly for Verstappen. But like we said, 44s now. 44s is where the time is at, and you can just see the big difference there between Hamilton and not to mention Charles Leclerc, 7.5 tenths near enough. So Mercedes are going to need to get to work. Russell still yet to pull together a top 5 time, and of course we all know about George Russell and his top 5 exploits this season. More often than not, he's able to position his Mercedes in the top 5 of things. Unfortunately for Latifi, still yet to nestle a time on the board, but if he can perhaps beat the likes of Lando Norris, maybe even a Guan Yu Zhou, who knows?
Well, he's on a flyer again, Verstappen. He's gone purple in Sector 1 and Sector 2. He's 1.5 seconds up. He carried 145 miles an hour through Copse Corner in these conditions. I mean, that is one hell of a car to pull that one off. Now, as Verstappen goes across the line, and he goes fastest now. So 1.8 seconds clear of Leclerc. Leclerc had a bit of a so-so lap. Not sure if he was backing off a bit. Hamilton is also improving at the moment. Russell has gone purple in the middle sector. So these final few minutes now, these are going to be critical. Who's going to get it on pole? Norris goes on the front row, but I'm expecting everyone else to be improving as well. So I have to wait and see as Hamilton comes across the line. P2 for Sir Lewis Hamilton. Only a few tenths off of Verstappen. Russell goes P3, 9 tenths off Verstappen. Where is Perez as he comes across the line? Only P5 behind Norris. So work to do for the 2 Ferraris at the moment, but the 2 Mercedes looking very pretty in second and third at the moment, George.
very strong front row and second row. Hamilton has certainly shown that he can mix it up, certainly with the likes of Max Verstappen, but George Russell will also be looking to try and improve as well. Near enough matching toe for toe in the first sector with Lewis Hamilton, just going that little bit faster as they make their way around again. Lando Norris in fourth. I'm just looking now. Charles Leclerc is finding some improvements as well in the first and second sector. So let's see what he can do when he crosses the line. And this is going to be a big moment for Leclerc because obviously doesn't want to start anywhere but the first row or the front row of the grid. As I'm just waiting for his time to tick forward. As he's currently gone a 32.4 in the first sector, 41.7, nearly 41.8 in the second sector. So he needs to find that little bit more in the final sector in order to compete. He goes second fastest, just behind that of Max Verstappen. So relegates Lewis Hamilton into third, with Russell into fourth, Norris in fifth. Perez, though, out on a lap, he can't seem to find an improvement. But Fernando has found an improvement in sector one.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on Fernando's lap. And that was a big lap for Leclerc because you probably feel he's got one, maybe two more laps in and maybe one more go at this at the very least. And you'd feel for him, he's really throwing it about. Carlos Sainz there, almost losing it on the way through Brooklands there. And as Hamilton goes back into P2. So you can't count Sir Lewis out of this. He's chipping away. And if, the last thing Leclerc will want is to see a Mercedes in front of him between him and Max Verstappen right now. He does not want to get caught up in that fight.
No, he doesn't. Leclerc was momentarily purple in the first sector, but it's just been stolen by Max Verstappen yet again. So Verstappen looking to go quicker, but Leclerc again looking to perhaps unseat the 7 times world champion as Alonso goes third fastest. So he now lands a 1:43.118, and that is just over a tenth of a second slower than that of Max Verstappen. That is sensational from Fernando Alonso.
El Plan indeed. You're just watching Leclerc now go through Maggots and Beckett's, really throwing it about, throwing caution to the wind there. He kind of has to go for broke on this. He cannot afford to get, bogged down. He's 1.2 seconds up on Verstappen's lap at the moment. Going to have to wait and see what Max Verstappen does by comparison. But Leclerc is on a flight and Verstappen matches him for the first 2 seconds. There's literally a hundredth between the two of them here, George. It could come down to this final sector now. Just watching Leclerc go through Club and Vale corners as Sainz goes fastest out of nowhere. Where was that one? But the other two are actually ahead of him on the timing sheets. Leclerc goes fastest. Where is Verstappen? Here we go. What's it going to be, George?
He's fastest of all, a 1:41.055. So that is a great lap, certainly for Verstappen. Purple in the first sector and the third sector. Leclerc took the second sector purple. Norris has managed to go third fastest as well with a 42.084. Great lap from Lando Norris, but still a second away from Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz there relegated to fourth fastest. Hamilton couldn't improve on his previous lap, but Fernando Alonso has improved in the first and second sectors. So keep your eyes peeled on El Plan, who will certainly look to maybe go quicker again now as he manages to move his way up. Hamilton, though, still in sixth. Sainz there as well. Leclerc still second fastest. Perez in third fastest now as well. Norris in fourth fastest. Sainz. Alonso goes fifth fastest now. So Mercedes in deep trouble here.
I was hoping Fernando was going to put that P4, George. But I mean, the lap that Perez has put in, obviously compared to his teammate and Leclerc, is not roughly where he'd want to be, although P3 he'd take that if he was offered it. Sainz has actually improved big time. He's now 200ths up on Verstappen's time after the first 2 sectors. Leclerc is half a second off of Sainz. Verstappen is purple in sector 1. Sainz could get this on the front row alongside Verstappen. I don't think Leclerc would want it, although the rain is coming down a lot now. So I think Leclerc's out of it here. What is this going to be for Sainz? Is it going to be on pole?
He's got pole.
He's gone pole.
He's gone, and he's in the 40s. He's the only driver in the 140s. He went purple in the second and the third sector, and he was not far away from Verstappen in the first sector either. Well, I say that it's approximately around 6/10 the first sector.
Verstappen's coming through now, and Verstappen doesn't improve. So Carlos Sainz, at the moment, I can't see, as the rain is coming down, Carlos Sainz nails the lap at the right time. And I think this is pole position for Carlos Sainz. It's his first of his career, George.
It is. It's his first career pole. I can't see anyone beating it. Hamilton's improved to fourth fastest as well. George Russell comes across the line. He can't improve from eighth fastest, so he can't beat Alonso. So that's massive for Carlos Sainz. I think that all but confirms it. Sainz is going to be on pole position.
Oh, I'll tell you what, that's a mega lap from Sir Lewis Hamilton right at the death when the weather was coming down. He needed that one big time. So the smooth operator... Oh, no, tell a lie. Perez has improved. He's gone fourth. So it's Ferrari, Red Bull, but it's Carlos Sainz, the smooth operator himself, getting his first pole position of his Formula One career, unless I am mistaken. I believe that's correct. Keanu Reeves in the Ferrari garage, obviously familiar with a few Hollywood scripts. I don't think many people would have written that one today, George.
No, I wouldn't have done. I mean, I had Sainz at 7th fastest today, down in qualifying. Good job. I'm not writing the rule book, that's for sure. But Sainz now first fastest, and his team are going to be absolutely delighted with that. Obviously, beating Verstappen, that is massive. To the context of their championship. Leclerc in third as well. That's a good lineup for Ferrari. That's a really strong position to be in. Obviously, Red Bull, very strong too. They've got Verstappen in second, Perez in fourth, not to mention as well Hamilton in fifth as well. Good day for Norris as well, I would say, getting into 6th fastest in the top 10, beating that of George Russell as well. And obviously Alonso, I think P7 is about where his pace is, I think, at this circuit here today. But you've got to give credit to the likes of Guan Yu Zhou, beating his teammates as well, getting 9th fastest. And what about Latifi? Top 10. I think regardless of where he finished in Q3, he would be delighted with what he's already managed to achieve.
Well, I mean, he didn't even attempt in Q3, did he? I mean, I'm just looking at the timesheets, 22 seconds off the fastest time. So he literally, I think in his mind, he was like, you know what, just put a lap in, don't crash, and just bring it back in the pits. And I think that's probably what Williams would have wanted of him, considering how brilliant that was. And given the way the track was going, I couldn't really see him getting anything other than the 10th place. So what a job from him. But just to go through the headlines, guys, if you just joined us or just missed an incredible British Grand Prix qualifying session, Carlos Sainz, a man who really needed to put it together for Ferrari, has delivered in qualifying with his first pole position of his career, stopping Max Verstappen, the world champion, who seemed the heavy favourite, who just wasn't able to deliver in that final sector. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari in P3, the first time this season, George, that he's not on the front row of the grid. So big surprise there, of course, with the exception of the Canadian Grand Prix for obvious reasons owing to the engine penalty. So we're not going to include that one, just in case you get that one in the comments, guys. Perez P4, Sir Lewis Hamilton P5. Think he'd probably, just being behind the Ferraris and Red Bulls, probably wouldn't be too disappointed with that one. Norris P6 for McLaren, so great job from him. Alonso in P7. Not quite the P4 you were hoping for, George, but a great job nonetheless from Fernando. George Russell will be very disappointed. Only P8 for him, but plenty of pace to do a bit more in the race for him, I am sure, tomorrow. Zhou Guanyu, great job for him in P9 for Alfa Romeo. And Nicholas Latifi getting an unexpected P10 in the Williams. What a great qualifying session that was, guys. And I hope you enjoyed that as well. I certainly did. George, based on what we've seen in qualifying, can Carlos Sainz convert pole to victory? It's something that Ferrari, even in Leclerc's hands, has struggled to do this season. They haven't won since the Australian Grand Prix. Can Carlos Sainz get the job done tomorrow?
I think he can, and I think now's the time for Carlos. I think off the basis of what he achieved in qualifying just now, there's no real reason why he can't pull the same elements together when we head into the race. But he has got a ruthless man alongside him on the front row. Obviously, Max Verstappen. It's hard to keep the Dutchman behind you. I think in terms of race pace, I think that is where Red Bull are better. And I firmly believe heading out of qualifying, I think obviously we've spoken about the speed in that Ferrari. By rights, they should be on pole position, Ferrari, by sheer pace. Obviously, I did put on my table that Leclerc would be fastest, but the fact that Sainz has obviously goes to prove as to how quick that Ferrari really is. But he's going to have a really strong test tomorrow from the likes of Max Verstappen. I think the first sector is going to be absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. And of course, the fact that Leclerc is behind Verstappen rather than Carlos Sainz might make tomorrow's start all the more interesting, as I'd imagine Leclerc will be chomping at the bit to try and get ahead of his championship rival. And let's not forget, perhaps Ferrari could use this to their advantage. We haven't seen a position where Ferrari have had to sort of sandwich a Red Bull and try and orchestrate a manoeuvre to get Leclerc ahead of his rival. So that could be interesting as well. And of course, let's not forget, we've got Sir Lewis Hamilton in the mix as well, looking good. The Mercedes race pace looks pretty good as well, so we can't rule them out of a decent result tomorrow either.
no, not at all. And I would certainly put Mercedes in a very, they are in a good spot. And I think Russell himself, I think in P8, I think obviously there's going to be a lot of jumbling heading through turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, heavy braking zone at turn 3 as well. We could see a few mistakes if the rain continues through the night and we come back into the morning and it's still torrential, or we still see some surface water. Again, the drivers will be on the wet compounded tires, and it's going to be difficult for them to negotiate. Certainly when you've got other cars on the track, it's a very turbulent situation. So, it can open doors, and I firmly believe that it's not all said and done yet for Mercedes. I think that they can certainly benefit. I think at the start, I'm also keeping my eye on Fernando as well. I think he'll have a good start tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing that sort of, not midfield battle, but that battle with Norris, Alonso and Russell all planted very nicely together indeed. It's certainly looking promising, and it's certainly going to be an exciting race tomorrow, I have no doubt, based on what we saw in qualifying. But guys, that is the end of the DNF1 live watch-along of the British Grand Prix. If you have enjoyed it, make sure to give the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you are new. But we'll be back on Monday morning with our podcast for our review of the British Grand Prix. It will not be a live one like we did last week. It'll be back to normal service, so make sure to check that one out on the DNF1 YouTube channel or on your favorite podcasting platform, whichever that you do listen to us to. And of course, don't forget also to check out George Morgan's socials on his Twitter and Instagram. Of course, we'll leave links below to that and the great work that he does with GT Open and Euro Formula. I definitely recommend those two series because they are some great racing series. Definitely something if you are a little bit starved after the Formula 1 action this weekend. I highly recommend that one as well. But until next time, guys, we've been DNF1. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next live DNF1 watch along in Austria. Till then, take care.